And I think about the risk we took. You know, we raised money in the beginning. We spent, to start off, $500,000 on manufacturing equipment before we even had a product, before we had a customer. We literally went and ordered a machine, which is the size of a bus, to make these products, and then went to talk to customers. If somebody came to me and said that, I'm thinking of this, but we believed it so much that we were like, well, it's gonna happen. I think probably one of the biggest trends and piece of innovation is decaf. Now that might not sound like innovation, but for the last 10 years, money's been cheap. And what businesses have been really good at is spending money, not making money. So we've all been good at raising money and then just spending it like there's no tomorrow because the money tree outside just keeps growing. And we came to a very harsh realization that
before we get into today's episode, I want to give a shout out to a special sponsor, Sam Lawrence Recruitment. We all know that finding the right people or the right job can feel really overwhelming, and that's exactly where Sam comes in. He really just gets it. It's not just about ticking boxes, it's about connecting the right people with the right opportunities. He takes the time to understand you and exactly what you're looking for, whether you're building a team or taking that next career leap. So definitely get in touch. Trust me, you'll be glad you did. At Getting to Grow, I believe that growth starts with connection. And that's where our sponsor, We Are All Marketing, comes in. I'm super excited to be partnering with Vic and the team over at We Are All Marketing. They're not just a marketing agency, they're storytellers, strategists, and your biggest advocates. Whether you're building a brand, launching a product, or strengthening your digital presence, We Are All Marketing helps you turn ideas into impact. With a personalized, results-driven approach, they ensure your vision reaches the right audience in the right way. Ready to grow your business? Visit weareallmarketing.com and see how they can help you thrive. Getting to Grow is also brought to you by the Coconut Collab. And full disclosure, as I'm sure most of you are aware, I work there, so I know how much love goes into everything that we make. We're all about creating delicious, dairy-free, plant-based treats that do not compromise on taste. From our creamy yogurts to our indulgent desserts, everything's made with coconuts and a whole lot of care. If you're looking for something naturally good but seriously tasty, and my favourite is just our natural coconut yogurt, I have it most mornings with granola and lots of honey. Trust me, you're going to absolutely love it. Welcome back to another episode of Getting to Grow. On this week's episode, we've got Peter Grainger, founder of Cafe Pod. So Peter, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what Cafe Pod is?
Sure. So my name's Peter. I am one of the three co-founders of Cafe Pod. We are a coffee brand business that myself and two friends formed 2011, so it feels like eternity ago. And we sell retail coffee in retail supermarkets and online, and predominantly products that you use at home.
Cool, thank you very much. Firstly, which I can't ignore, which you've just picked up on, is the branding of the fox on your hoodie that you're wearing for us, which is also matching my skirt on sofa right now. Tell me a little bit about the fox. Obviously, my son is Fox. I'm a bit obsessed with them. Play up to it a lot. So yeah, how did the fox come about?
So a couple of years ago, we went through a bit of a rebrand, and we wanted something that was a bit more iconic, something that kind of stood up and you saw it in the distance. And actually, one of the things we wanted was something that you could put on a cap or a hoodie that was distinctive enough. And we were trying to find something that was grounded in what we're about. And myself and my two co-founders, Brent and Simon, we're all from South Africa. We actually met in London. And often, there's a lot of people from all over the world in London, and we all come here to seek our fame and fortune and whatever else. So it's a bit of a land of opportunity. And as we were going through the process of trying to figure this out with the agency that we were working with, we kind of landed on this fox. It actually came off, we were looking at door knockers and to use some imagery, and the one was kind of a fox with like the door knocker in its mouth, and that kind of started things off. And eventually we went, actually the fox is quite cool, and the fox is a very UK, I don't know, it's very synonymous with the UK, but especially in London. If you live in London, you definitely know about foxes, and there's a bit of a street smart, wily kind of, they kind of make their own way in the urban environment. So we thought actually that was quite a good image and an icon for us as kind of people who've kind of trying to come and make our way in London and do what we wanted to do. So we thought that works pretty well. So that's how it kind of came about.
Well, I'm certainly a fan.
Good.
So you all met in London.
Yeah.
And what were you all doing before Cafe Pod?
So we all used to work in financial services. We worked for a hedge fund called GLG Partners.
And is that how you guys met?
Yeah, so we didn't know each other outside of that. We actually came from different cities, and we all worked together quite closely for a number of years, and bonded quite a lot. I think in any job that you work quite intensely, like we're probably working 100 hours a week. So
investment banking.
Hedge fund. So kind of it was just a very intense. This was kind of 2006 to 2009, 2010, financial crisis, all that kind of stuff. So pretty intense, incredible company, incredible people. And there was a whole group of us that really got to know each other, and we used to do everything together. Work, go on holiday, and we still do. We're a pretty tight group.
I was going to say that's a lot of hours to be spending in somewhere.
It is. I mean, when you're working 12 hours on a Saturday, 12 hours on a Sunday, eating 3 meals, and it just becomes standard. That's one of the reasons you kind of eventually move on, like I did. I can't keep doing this.
It's unsustainable, yeah.
You learn an incredible amount, and I think one of the big things about that is it really prepares you in terms of a work ethic when you start your own business and you realize how much energy and effort you need to put into it. At least we were all used to working at that level, so it wasn't just like, oh shit, like this is a lot of hours. We were kind of used to it, so we embraced it.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, you kind of came from like, well, this is all I know, so I'm literally going to do it.
Yeah, so it wasn't like we're used to a normal 9 to 5 and then go, oh, I have to work the evenings. We're like, well, who doesn't work evenings?
Yeah.
If you were home before 10 p.m, it was a early night.
Yeah, mental really. And so I'm assuming your days were fueled by coffee.
Yes.
So how did the idea of Cafe Pod arise?
So I suppose beforehand, all of us had a similar view of coffee that I suppose the average person would have. You go to Starbucks, Nero, Costa, whatever's closest, and we drank as much coffee as the next person. When I finished work, I kind of took some time out, so I went traveling in South America with 2 friends, and just to, for want of a better word, sit on a rock, try to figure out what I wanted to do, and traveled for about 6 months, and that was absolutely incredible, like life-changing time. And then I went via Cape Town for a month or 2, and I basically saw somebody doing something similar, and I think it was more curiosity than anything else. I just kind of went and had a look and was asking tons of questions, and eventually realised, well, actually, this could be something interesting. And I came back to London and had coffee, or actually we had dinner together. I mean, Brenton and Simon and I, we used to get together all the time, and we just ended up talking about this and what I had seen, and we started chewing over it, and eventually we went, you know what, that's something we could do. We know nothing about coffee and manufacturing and branding, but it doesn't matter. Let's just give it a go, and it's kind of how it started.
Amazing. It always kind of, it starts, like most people I speak to on the podcast, it always does start like that. It starts from a very early initial concept, and then they just sort of go for it, and it's then a snowball effect of stuff that happens, and you learn so much along the way. So yeah, I mean, gosh.
I mean, the naivety of it, there's naivety, arrogance. I don't know, you kind of back yourself, and often when you have an idea, you believe it so much, you will it into existence, and I think that's where that belief just fuels you forward. So in our minds, this was inevitable. So to us, it was a matter of just doing it, and it would happen. So you dismiss all the other risks and what you don't know, because what you feel that what you do know is so incredible that it doesn't matter. And looking back, it's just mad.
Would you do it now if you knew? I
mean, it's the age-old question. The thing is, like, I definitely would have done a lot of things differently. And I think about the risk we took. You know, we raised money in the beginning, and we spent, to start off, $500,000 on manufacturing equipment before we even had a product, before we had a customer.
Wow, my God.
I mean, we literally went and ordered a machine, which is the size of a bus, to make these products, and then went to talk to customers. And if somebody came to me and said that, I'm thinking about this, I'd be like, that's the craziest thing in the world. But we believed it so much that we were like, well, it's going to happen. But yeah.
It did happen though.
And it did. It did. So.
Thank God.
And if we hadn't thought that, then we wouldn't have done it.
Exactly.
So, and there's always things you don't know. You know, I think, well, I've been doing this for 12 years now, but there's, you know, I've only scratched the surface. So there's 1,000 things I still don't know, and I'm still taking a naive approach. And you have to because if you worry about things, you'll never get anything done.
Yeah. Totally agree. Yeah, you've got to do. So now your range kind of, you've got obviously ground coffee, you've got pods. What did it start off with?
So we started with pods.
Pods.
So that was really our entry points. We saw that Nespresso is a system and a platform, which is incredible and an amazing brand, but you couldn't always get what you wanted to drink on using that system, and you couldn't buy what you wanted to buy. So from a consumer point of view, there were some gaps there that were the consumers ultimately being underserved. So being in supermarkets, that's where in the UK everybody shops for stuff, and it didn't exist there. So we saw that opportunity. So we initially, the idea was to work with other brands to help them get their brands into this format. And then when everybody was, what you realize is big businesses are very risk averse. They don't want to be first through the wall, whereas the naivety of small businesses, you just go, well, we're just going to do it. So you're not, the concept of risk mitigation is not something that is in your vocab. So eventually when we couldn't find anybody who wanted their pods made, and one of the retailers, so actually Waitrose were our first customer, and the buyer there is our biggest champ, Polly, who's still there, and she's awesome. And she believed in us, and she loved our energy, and she knew her customers wanted this product, and she put her neck out, and we worked with her to really develop the product and the offering, and she was like, yeah, actually I want your brand, and we didn't have a brand at that time, so we went back and started Googling branding agencies. And,
amazing, okay.
So we were really feeling our way in the dark,
Yeah.
and then we eventually went to talk to a couple of branding agencies, and then we kind of said to them, well, we needed to be a cool brand to appeal to the Nespresso consumer, but not. And that was our brief. Now again, as we've learned things, that's not how you brief anything.
Yeah.
You need a little bit more than that, but we literally didn't know what we didn't know. So, but we managed to get our way through and get listings, and so Waitrose put us in their stores, and it feels like yesterday, but that was 12 years ago.
Wow. And were you the first pods in retail then?
Yeah, the first ones in the UK. Probably one of the first.
Now,
yeah,
I went down the aisle the other day just when I was doing a bit of research just to have a look, and I was really shocked actually, because I literally have 2 Nespresso machines that I'm looking at right now, but I don't, and they've got their bigger one now, you can have bigger pods and stuff like that, but I actually prefer the little ones. I get more of a sharper coffee, which is what I like anyway. But there's so many brands out there doing it now that I hadn't gone down that aisle in so long, because I ordered them all offline, so I don't really go and buy them in store, because I buy them in bulk and then you get a bit of discount and stuff. So amazing that you guys are first to market and really brought that, because you're right, Nespresso weren't in retail. And
the technology and the whole market has changed over time, and I suppose we came to realise that Nespresso is an incredible brand, and what they've done as a food brand is they've also created
else. Like a lifestyle, haven't they?
It's a category, and that's ultimately what branding is about.
Yeah.
And I suppose separating that out, there is a delivery mechanism, and then there's a brand, and the delivery mechanism is pods, which has been around for ages, and in Europe there's plenty of different formats, and I suppose we realised quite quickly that everybody was going to want this delivery mechanism as part of it. I mean, that's really why we set the business up in the first place, because we saw this was going to happen. It's kind of like when, I'm assuming back in the day when the can was first invented, and let's say beer was only in bottles, and then suddenly it's in a can. The first person to put beer in a can would have been a novelty to it, but eventually now you don't look at it and go, wow, there's some beer in a can. It's just everybody's got it.
Yeah.
So we knew this was eventually going to happen, that a standard offering of a coffee business would be a bag of coffee, or a bag of beans, bag of ground coffee, and pods for whatever system was popular. So, and that's what's happened now. So as a consumer, and ultimately it was a consumer move. There was an untapped and underserved part of the consumer needs, and this has opened up, and the consumer is now better off. They can drink what they want in their machine, which is ultimately what we set out to do. But what it meant is we needed to evolve the business to move beyond just opening up that category.
Yeah, of course. And so you spent £500,000 on piece of manufacturing before you got any customers or anything, which, as you say out loud, is pretty nuts. But I just really rate like the brazenness of it, because actually like you do need that naivety at the start. I completely agree. But how did you go about sourcing your coffee? Because now, when I think about the coffee industry, and I think this is quite London-centric, but it's all about sustainability and making sure that the coffee that you're buying is sustainable, and you're going to like, the independent chains and getting your nice coffee and spending that little bit extra because they're not mass producing it like the Starbucks and the Costas of the world. So how have you found that process evolve over the years?
I mean, it's definitely evolved, and what's important to people has definitely evolved. There's a couple of different things you mentioned there. I mean, sourcing coffee is, I suppose people forget that coffee is a natural product, and whether it's, you have to source coconuts or rice or beans, whatever it is, any natural product, especially if it's not grown in the UK, has a supply chain, and sometimes you can do it yourself, and sometimes you need help with different, depending on the complexities of sourcing that. I suppose we realized really early on that we wanted to focus on making these pods and high quality pods. What we didn't want to do is open a roastery as well, so we very early on started looking for a partner to help us facilitate that process, and we found a roaster up in North Lincolnshire, and we went to see them, and the founder was who's still, there's two guys still in the business, roastery called Lincoln in York, and incredible business, and he was pretty direct with us, but in I like the passion, but you guys need to be a little bit put back in your box, but I will help you and work with you, and we've got the expertise, we can help you source, we can teach you about coffee, because we literally knew nothing about coffee. So we spent a long time working with them, driving from London 4 hours up, or 4.5 hours up, 4.5 hours back twice a week kind of thing. I spent 12 hours in the factory. So we spent months and years working on the floor of the coffee roastery, just learning the whole time, and finding out about different types of beans and where it comes from and how it's sourced and how the supply chain works. And then ultimately, and I suppose not coming from the coffee world allowed us almost to see things from a consumer's point of view. And consumers, first and foremost, when it's a food product, it's taste. So that was our focus from the beginning, is this needs to taste great. And if you come from that angle, you get slightly less obsessed about origin, the detail in the supply chain, that comes later, and that's important, but customers, if it doesn't taste good, it doesn't matter what the story is. So that was always our focus, and then we knew that depending on the profile and the ultimate taste that we were trying to create, certain regions and certain types of beans and certain ways to roast would allow us to do that. So that's kind of developed over time, and as we've started off with a couple of blends, and we've developed that into our range today. But it's been quite an organic process. So I suppose to answer your question, we work with the roasters that we work with, and their expertise in sourcing. We have somebody who's been part of the team since day one, who works on all the product development with myself and roasting and sourcing. So we're pretty into it, and it's part of the fun. And I suppose your question of sustainability, I mean, it's a global question at the moment with food. How you kind of just be more aware about it. Pods definitely have their own challenges. When we first started the business, there was no option. The product is now in aluminium capsules, which is almost across the category. Ours is 80% recycled aluminium used for the pods. So we really and this again, working with the people, the partners that our manufacturing partners have helped develop that and improve. But in the early days, the pods were plastic. They had their own little wrapper. So we've been through this process of just reiteration and improving and getting more simple things, like getting more pods in a box, which means you get more on a pallet, which means that you can transport more on a truck, and you're using less cardboard. So actually these small changes, a couple of millimeters here and there, you suddenly go, wow, we can fit 40% more in a truck, and we need 40% less cardboard, for instance. So there's a lot of small changes that actually have quite a big impact, and that's been happening over the last 12 years.
Yeah, which leads me on really nicely to my next question about innovation.
Okay.
So in terms of innovation in this industry, in this category in the industry, coffee innovation has been, dramatic over the last 5 years. I mean, when I think about coffee culture in the UK, we are so advanced. I was in Paris not that long ago and I asked for a takeaway coffee and they just looked at me so peculiarly. They were like, "What, you're not going to have it in here?" And they don't really get it. They're like, "What?" So I think we are very spoiled here with coffee culture. But in terms of innovation, other than the packaging side of it, how would you say you guys are constantly innovating in this space with products or what else?
I suppose with any innovation, you have to go back to the customer. What are the customers looking for? What do they want? What are they saying? What are they not saying? I mean, innovation is happening in coffee in different ways in different parts of the coffee world. So, high street coffee, that's evolving. Milk alternatives, how that's prepared. In-home coffee is moving a lot slower. So there's been more innovation in format, for example, like pods. The convenience is a massive driver in food at home for everything, whether it's rice, coffee. Convenience drives a lot of the change. In terms of innovation for us, if I think about what's happened over the years, we've had single origin waves of interest in single origin, and that's kind of come and gone. Well, it hasn't gone. It's there are trends that peak and everybody gives it a go and then go, this customer likes this, they don't like this, and then we kind of evolve. I think probably one of the biggest trends and piece of innovation is decaf. Now that might not sound like innovation, but the quality of decaf.
I was going to ask about decaf actually.
Decaf historically was pretty terrible, and it was for those annoying people who wanted decaf, and it was almost dismissed. And decaf, the quality of decaf was never great because you can pretty much decaffeinate any beans. You just have to put them through a decaffeination process. But because the demand wasn't there and the level of that was being demanded wasn't high, nobody was using the good beans as part of that process.
Okay.
Whereas now there are people who, as the demand picked up and people are like, actually, I want a good cup of decaf coffee. Better beans start getting used, so your actual quality of decaf starts improving, and then people going, wow, this is a great cup of coffee. You can't even tell the difference if it's decaf or not. So, and I think COVID and lockdown has really accelerated that process. So that's one of the trends we saw, and we're like, actually, let's make sure that if you like decaf, you're not being underserved, and we can actually really create an amazing cup of coffee for you. And you're having as good a time as somebody who has a caffeinated cup of coffee. So that's one of the routes we've gone down, and we've kind of developed a couple of those. Our latest innovation, and again in the UK, this is very new. Go to the States, it's very common. Is half caffeinated coffee, so half caf. So it's kind of a half a hit as opposed to a full hit.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I haven't heard about that in the UK at all.
So,
but actually, I could totally see myself having that. My full caffeine, 9 till 11 a.m. and then, maybe 2 or 3, I'd actually have a half it. So I don't want necessarily a decaf then, but then I don't, sweet, get it.
So it's, and again, it's one of these concepts where, because nobody's been exposed to it, it sounds odd, but the moment you think about it, it's actually quite a logical thing. And you see it in low alcohol beers, so it's coming through low fat. I mean, you think about skim and semi-skim milk. The concept's been around, I don't want full fat milk, so skim and semi-skim have been, which is it's half fat milk. But nobody's really thought about that from or at least in this country, from a caffeinated point of view, and suddenly that's the sensitivity or awareness of how much caffeine is being consumed is on people's minds. So this is, again, back to consumers. What are people looking for? But you don't want to sacrifice the quality of the coffee. So that's something we brought to market a little bit ago, and people love it.
And what would you say some of your biggest challenges have been as a founder of Canny? I know when I ask this question, I get very similar.
How long have you got? Yeah,
literally. So give me your top kind of 2 that you said were the biggest challenges, and then how you overcame them.
I think, look, each founder is different and each business is different, and I think part of it is, what was your background before? Did you come from a sales or a marketing background, have you managed people before? If you've never managed people before, you don't know how to set goals and manage people and feedback and all these kind of things. So you're kind of stumbling through if you don't know how to, I don't know, numbers, cash flow, finances, all that kind of stuff. I think, some of the biggest challenges. I've just got, I can see just like thousands of them rushing past, and I'm like, which one to pick? And I want to make it relevant. I think that it's when the penny drops and you realize that you've been doing something wrong for ages, and it's so obvious once you realize, you kind of feel like an idiot, but then you also realize you now are aware you can do something. And where I'm going with that is, over the last 10 years, money's been cheap. Everybody's been raising money. And what businesses have been really good at is spending money, not making money. So we've all been good at raising money and then just spending it like there's no tomorrow, because the money tree outside just keeps growing. And we came to a very harsh realization that a business ultimately is about the ability to create value and therefore make a profit off the back of that. And if you don't do that, there's a problem waiting for you. And when that penny dropped, we realized we had to make some big changes in the business, and that was about restructuring, letting people go, stopping spending, resetting margin, all this kind of stuff. And some of that stuff can take years, but you realize you've gone down this path. And if you want to, I suppose the equivalent is almost like if you've been eating junk food and boozing and doing no exercise and for years and years and years, and you realize actually I need to be the super healthy person. It doesn't happen overnight. So it's this long, grindy process of slowly changing and being disciplined and diligent and not eating the cake and going for your run at 6 o'clock in the morning when you don't want to. So to use that analogy, from a business point of view, you realize the party's over. The good times of just spending, and that was pretty brutal. When you're having to then go, we got this wrong, and now we're going to have to let 3 of you go because we're idiots, kind of thing. And that's brutal when you have to kind of, people have given their heart and soul to a business, and and having to disappoint people because you haven't been on top of your game.
Yeah, that's really tough. And also when you work together for such a long time, it's not just, you're not just, you've built up a personal relationship with these people, so letting them go is really tough because they are a part of the family.
I think to your other point, actually, the challenge is when you start a business, you don't realize that you have to, sales is the name of the game, but not like, yes, sales, you've got something to sell, but you need to sell all the time, all day, your ideas, for suppliers, to customers, to staff. Every day is about selling a vision, selling what you're trying to do, and a lot of this doesn't exist. So you're trying to get people to see in their minds and get them to buy into it and follow you. Don't go work for that big company and that safe salary. Come join us. Who knows what's going to happen? I can't pay you as much, but it'll be fun.
Exactly.
So you've really got to get good at selling that vision. A lot of suppliers logically won't work with you and shouldn't work with you. So now you've got to convince them, going, this is high risk, but you still, because you need the supply. So you've really got to get good at that, and it's probably one of the biggest realizations and challenges of it's an everyday thing as a founder, and you don't have a choice either. You can't be like, I don't really want to do it. It's like, well, okay.
If you don't do it, then nothing happens.
But game over.
Gosh, it is literally, you cannot take your foot off the pedal with it, because otherwise it will just stagnate, and then it's not gonna work. Obviously customer experience is really important, and coffee is a big ritual. It's something in my day that I genuinely wake up getting really excited for. So how does Cafe Pod obviously from buying the coffee to kind of having it in the morning as part of their routine, how do you kind of enhance the customer's experience, and how do you kind of go down, how do you work on that premise?
I mean, coffee is a very special occasion for people. It
really is special, like it's become a lot more special, but it is a real sit down and enjoy it, and people go meet for coffee, you know, they go out for dinner, they go for coffee, it's like, oh, let's go for a walk and get a coffee.
There are many reasons why people drink coffee, and however you use coffee in your life, you know, we need to respect that and then make sure that we are adding to that experience, not taking away. And these are some of the experiences you learn early on in the business, and interacting with customers is the best thing. So in the early days, I used to do customer service for the business, and so answer all the emails, and get the window that gave us and myself, like in terms of what the role that we play in people's lives. And certain products don't play that big a role, but coffee. And I remember answering emails, and you know, we were still figuring out how to, the technology, we were putting amazing coffee in, but the technology of the capsule hadn't caught up to where we needed it to be. Sometimes the capsules didn't work as intended or whatever else. You would swear we had killed people's firstborn. I mean, the responses that we got were just disproportionate. I mean, it was nuts what people were saying. But you realize that changing your coffee is quite a high risk move.
Yeah.
Like, this sets me up for the day. If this is bad or I've run out, my whole day is ruined. Yeah. So for somebody to go, I've been drinking this for a couple of years, I'm going to give this one a go. It's a high risk move. And I think we learned this early on, that if people are going to take a chance on us, we need to make sure that we deliver on that, because if they take a chance on you and you mess it up and you ruin their morning, they will curse you until they die, and they will tell as many people as possible
I was going to say, that's
how you've ruined their day and their life. So I think we had a newfound respect for the role coffee plays, and therefore we were like, okay, if we're going to do this, we need to make sure that when people try our coffee, they're like, holy shit, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, and actually, as simple as that is, if you can focus on that, and when we develop products now, we have a very unsophisticated way of developing. Sorry, let me rephrase that. We've got a very sophisticated way of developing the blends and the products, but the ultimate test is a couple of us taking a sip and just, what's the emotional reaction? Do we go, ooh, that's good, I could drink a couple of those, or that's interesting. It's probably the worst phrase you could ever hear. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting means I'm going to drink half of this and never touch it again.
Yeah.
I want people to go, have you got some more? Like, can I have more and more and more? So if you can nail that, you're kind of 80% the way there. And then, you know, as a business, especially when you go direct to consumer, there's all the touch points. How does your website work? What's your communication like? All these little things that don't seem that important have the ability to either really piss us off or enhance the experience. And so one of the things, you know, we are quite hot at is just talking to our customers, and when people buy from us, just phoning them and just being like, hey, thanks.
Yeah.
It sounds so arbitrary, but people are so shocked that happens because nobody does it.
Yeah, I was gonna say we've become quite far removed from just phenomenal service, and I think people love service. And it's like this age-old thing that's been around forever. But when you're made to feel special as a consumer, you do not forget, and you tell as many people as possible. So you're right, word of mouth is so powerful. And when it's bad word of mouth, it's even more powerful because it really damages the brand. But actually, when you've had a really good experience somewhere, you really want to tell people about it. And actually, you're like being a D2C brand, so you're getting a lot of consumer data, and therefore getting their phone number and their email address, having access to that is kind of priceless. And building kind of
depends what you do with it.
Of course, like you've got to put it to good use.
Yeah, and just talking to your customers, and I think when you go through the phases of starting, especially in food and drink, your business, you kind of look at what's trendy because you don't know what you don't know, so you copy what everybody else is doing, and then suddenly you've been doing it long enough, and you start stepping back, going, that's not a long-term solution. And what I've started doing is actually looking at how businesses traditionally have done things over the last decades. And I'm talking about going to the 90s, 80s, 70s, 60s, going back to when you had your local shops around your house. your butcher, your baker, your hairdresser, your whatever else it is. Why do some people go back to their shops for 30 years? They didn't have data. So what were they doing that got people to spend money for 30 years and their family go there? Pharmacy, people making somebody feel special. And they didn't have a loyalty program, they didn't have fancy tools, and all that stuff can enhance and layer on top, but underneath it was people caring about people. And I think that's often gets forgotten because we've got all these fancy tools and things and toys to play with. But actually making people feel special is a human thing. And I'm sure people will be hearing this thinking, but that's not scalable. But it is the fundamental foundation of the business.
People buy people. You say it's not scalable, and yes, to some degree it's not, because you can't copy paste every single person, speak to every single customer that goes into Traders and buys your product. But it is really scalable when you're talking to your customers that have massive scale. So if I'm talking to my buyer at Breaks and I'm making him feel special, he has buying power for the majority of the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
So yes, I think it's...
And nothing can really replace that as a core fundamental. And you can use these tools and layer them on top to help oil the momentum that you create from that.
Yeah.
But if you only think about it from this tool and that tool, that you've got a hollow beginning, and then you're not going to be able to say, well, we've been working with these guys for 10 years, for 20 years.
Yeah.
Or now my kids come here and go because that's our family comes here. Type thing. So it's sometimes you get caught up in we're in a very digital world now, and you get caught up in that, and sometimes going, right, what did people do when these things didn't exist? Because there were still amazing businesses and loyalty and all the things we have today, but without those tools. So what were they doing? And often the answers are so much more obvious and simpler when you look at it through that frame.
So you utilise a lot that within Cafe Pod?
Yeah. So talking, making outbound phone calls to our D2C customers, just calling people and saying thank you. You'd be shocked at how impactful that is.
Also, people won't pick up the phone and go, "You're right."
They do. They kind of like, I don't understand.
Coffee was nice, thanks. Have a good day.
But then, and some people, you catch them at the wrong time or whatever. But I think people are so appreciative. Now it helps that the coffee is amazing.
Yes.
But that gives us confidence to call people because we know we're already delivering on that because we've spent 12 years making sure the coffee is phenomenal. And again, it's about building the layers on the core. You can't call people and try and be nice to them when they've just had the worst meal or the worst whatever product. You're starting at the wrong level. So we've kind of over the last couple of years gone back to basics. Like, what is the foundation of an epic food business? It's products and then experience.
Yeah. And what's the size of the team at Cafe Pod?
So there are 15, 16 of us.
Okay.
We're a fully remote business. So we used to have an office pre-COVID, and then we went remote, and we've kind of stayed like that ever since. So
do you do like weekly kind of or monthly meetups? And
yeah, we'll get together once a month in London, and we spend the day together, and effectively we do that. The focus of that day is connection and all the things you cannot do online and over Zoom, etc., etc. So that is about connection, and it's quite cool in a way because people are actually excited to see each other. Because you haven't really seen somebody for a month, so it's just the energy's good. And it's working for us, and I'm a big advocate of kind of remote working.
Yeah, it allows a lot of flexibility as well.
And I think especially in coffee, where you can have a very London view of coffee, which is not a UK view. London it's very different.
Yeah,
so having a team that's spread across the country, everybody brings their own unique view of coffee, and that diverse view of the subject matter helps us be better. And when somebody talks about, I use a cafetiere as a great example. In some parts of the country, that's a super fancy piece of equipment, and in other parts of the country, it's not. And it just depends on what lens and what you're being exposed to. So keeping us grounded in a way. Because ultimately, what we're trying to do is get more people drinking coffee at home. We want to empower the UK people in the UK to brew great coffee at home. So. But we can't pretend that everybody already knows everything.
Yeah, you've got to educate.
You've got to really start from where people are at.
Yeah. Can you share any memorable stories that you can that come to the top of your head when you think about your journey at Cafe Pod?
Yeah, memorable. I suppose one of the most unique stories we had. So we had a shipment of products coming in from Europe. We were doing a test with a different type of capsule, and we had a listing in I think it was Asda, and we had guaranteed that they had said, right, we're going to put this many products in this many stores, and you don't miss that. You make sure. And there had been a delay at the factory we were working with, or the roastery we were working with. I think it was in Spain, and we knew that the truck we were bringing the pods in, and then we were co-packing them or putting them into boxes in the UK, and we knew that it actually wasn't going to make it in time. And if you don't deliver, especially for your first delivery for a retailer, and this was like do or die. So we decided last minute that a bunch of us got into a convoy of, I think it was 3 or 4 cars, and we drove to Calais, and we got on the train with our cars, and we waited in a parking lot on the other side, on the French side, for these trucks to arrive, and then we filled the cars up with, so they were in a parking lot, it was like something out of a movie, hauling boxes out of this massive truck and shoving them into people's vans and just literally filling them up to the brim, and then trying to get them back through customs without looking suspicious. But you've just got like thousands of pods everywhere in 4 cars, all in convoy. I think one of the fascinating things was that one of the guys at the time, his friend was helping us out with a bunch of stuff, and he's a BA pilot, and he's super organized. So when we were first going out, he was like, right, there's a radio for each of you, we're gonna, so we can communicate in the cars. So we're driving out, and he's in the front one, and he basically comes over and does the BA pilot thing. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We're now cruising at 3 feet on our way to. So he did the whole like classic pilot thing on this adventure. So it kind of set things up, and we managed to then get all these products back, get to the factory or the co-packing facility. Then we had got the rest of the team to meet us there. So everybody had kind of driven up from the office, and then we spent must be 10 hours, everybody in the team basically hand packing boxes to fill these pallets because the truck was coming at like 5 a.m. in the morning to get out to Asda. And it was just this, we really kind of pulled the team together, but just getting on a train to go to another country to try and basically save hours, because you knew that was a do or die thing. So we've done some pretty nuts things.
I think like at the start you go into a bit of fight or flight mode, like you had to hit that launch. So you're like, I will do everything, and actually driving to Calais was kind of like, it seemed like the logical thing to do. Like,
you don't even question it.
Yeah, you just get in and do it.
And you realise you become super resourceful. Like no is not an option. So the answer was always like, well, how do we do it? Let's figure out a way.
Yeah.
And it's just this always figuring out. It's just problem solving all the time. And eventually your brain just gets into that mode.
Yeah.
Which is part of the fun.
And coffee is obviously, well not obviously, but it is a very saturated market. How do you guys keep your unique position and diversify against your competition?
A couple of ways, and these are, I think often when people ask this question, listeners kind of are expecting this like aha thing, like we put the secret ingredient in that nobody else in the world does. But in reality, you want to be better at a couple of, you want to be differentiated in a couple of ways, so that when your customer thinks about that need state or the products, they separate you out from everybody else in the market. And coffee, the actual coffee bean, and there's only so many things you can do to it, so let's be honest. Like, you can roast it in the saucing, but it's not like, I don't know, meat. You can make steak, burger, spaghetti bolognese, like there's 1,000 things you can make.
The versatility.
Yeah, so it's, and this is going to sound so arbitrary, but taste is very underestimated. Coffee can be subjective, but every country has its own things they like. Chocolates, people in the UK grow up on dairy milk. That is the benchmark for what good chocolate tastes like.
Yeah.
And as sectors evolve, then things move on, but there's still a benchmark of what, when you give it to somebody, you go, ooh, that's good. And coffee is the same. Each country will be slightly different. The Americans, the Scandies, the Brazilians, we've all got, and so meeting people where they're at and going, well, if this is what you really like, how do we do a great version of that so we meet your taste bang on? And I think we've done that exceptionally well. So the amount of people that come to us and go, I've tried so many others and finally this is amazing.
Yeah.
I can't believe it's taken me so long to find this. So that's one of them. And then just building on the service element, again, seems so arbitrary, but so few people do it. So trying to combine those, and then I suppose just trying to add a little energy. I think my experience in the coffee industry is we tend to take ourselves a little bit too seriously. It's a bit kind of
hip, edgy.
It's just coffee, and it's not an accessory. It's not a status symbol. It's something to be celebrated and enjoyed with everybody. And the UK is in an interesting. It's in coffee culture. It's almost halfway between the US and Europe. Europe is very old school and has this distinctive Europeanness, and the US is a bit more kind of everyman. It's just coffee isn't put on this pedestal. People enjoy it, and it's just part of the fabric of society. And I think we could do a lot by taking a little bit more from the American side, and that's one of the things. Just kind of loosen up about it, and just ultimately we're just trying to get more people drinking great coffee at home.
And what advice would you give to entrepreneurs starting out their journey?
Slow is better.
Yeah.
Because in this, what you read in the media, and there's a lot of hype about it, and it's all about raising money and getting to unicorn status or celebrate the people who do things the quickest. But if you actually look at the people who've had successful food businesses and business in general, it's been overnight success over 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And that's just how long it takes. Yeah. And it's manage your expectations. The slower you go in the beginning and get the fundamentals right, it means you won't have to redo them 4 times, because I always use the analogy of snakes and ladders. And we're so impatient to reach for the stars that you skip over things, and then you go 3 spaces up, 2 spaces down. So you go down the snake all the time, and you're eventually, if you're still around, you realize it's probably not a good use of time. And then so try slowly. It depends on what you want to do.
It's funny, like when I was younger, my dad always used to say to me, because we were like lucky enough to go skiing quite a lot as kids, and me and my brother like putting on our ski boots. It was just one of those things I just hated doing. It just took the ages, all clumpy. And my dad always used to say to me, like, Zoe, spend 5 minutes down here doing that properly. It will save you 2 hours at the top of the mountain when your feet's all horrible. You go, your feet's been cold and grim. And actually, it's true in the sense of ski boots, but also that is true in the sense of everything. Like, if you just spent that, slowed down a bit, like, it might take you 5 more minutes, but actually, spending that 5 more minutes will save you hours in the long run of redoing. And it's kind of the same with like buy cheap, buy twice mentality. Like if you are buying stuff really on the cheap, you're going to continue buying cheap shit. If you actually just buy one really good jacket, they'll probably last you forever. I just had Sam from Batch, and he makes really amazing quality suits made to order, and actually if you just had the one or the couple from him versus your 15 from H&M, you are going to get what you pay for out of it. And I think what you just said is like so true, and it works across pretty much everything you're doing.
And it's when you start a business, you're super excited, and it depends on why you start a business. I definitely say if you're starting a business because you want to make lots of money, there's not there are easier ways to make money. Yes, some people do eventually make some money, but there's a lot more that crash and burn, and you do learn things along the way. And I think in my experience looking at who have built successful businesses, funny enough, it's actually people who it's either family businesses or couples, because they're not doing it because they want to be Instagram famous or they want to see their face in the newspapers. Often it's just like, oh, we could really do with another 500 quid a month to contribute to family holidays. Well, maybe we should sell this just a few, and then they get the 500 quid and then they go, oh, actually, maybe we could do 1,000. And there's just this incremental. There's no like, how do we become billionaires in 3 years? And by doing that, they have to, that 500 quid a month that they sell, they get feedback and they make a great product. So they're honing it, they're getting it right before they scale, effectively. But they're not thinking about the word scale, almost it doesn't occur to them. And eventually, people, it will naturally happen, but and it's challenging because, people start businesses for different reasons, but it is, go slow to go fast is probably easier said than done, though.
Yeah, definitely easier said than done because you get excited.
You do, and we're all,
Yeah. What does a typical day look like for you as the co-founder of Cafe Pod?
I tend to try and time block my weeks, so plan out and make sure that I'm not jumping around from topic to topic.
Yeah.
It happens inevitably. At the moment we're going through interviewing quite a lot of people like hiring, so I'm involved in all first interviews and then sifting through CVs, and then you kind of shifting to e-commerce stuff, and then you're talking about supply chain and then cash flow. So you're definitely moving between those subjects on a daily basis. But what I try and do is make sure that a couple of days a week I'm kind of setting aside like half a day or a day just to focus on one thing.
Yeah.
And it's so, the longer you've been in a business, the longer you just know everything about the business, and it's so easy to get involved and try and go back to, okay, what's the value I create? What am I supposed to be doing in my role as CEO or whatever else? If there's 1 or 2 or 3 things I'm supposed to be doing this week, what are those things? And it's difficult because we all get distracted. So Mondays tend to be a bit more planning and admin. Lots of meetings on a Tuesday, just catching up with teams, seeing trading from the previous week, just where we're at with things. Wednesday and Thursday kind of get into some more meaty things, and then Friday catch up, board member catch ups, and just kind of a bit of space to think and plot stuff.
Yeah.
That's at least how the plan looks. How it ends up happening
is
is another story.
I have one more question actually, which we haven't touched on, which is marketing.
Yes.
So how do you guys go about your marketing plan? What is it? Is it word of mouth? Is it Instagram? Do you focus on socials? Do you focus on events? How would you say that you're...
Over time...
I love your branding, by the way.
Oh, great, thanks. Over time we've morphed and changed depending on where we've been in our focus. We've done over time sampling. I think for any food business, product in hand makes a massive difference. Just getting feedback on the taste. The different channels, when you're a small business, distribution is inevitably awareness. We've been doing D2C for a long time, so we've got quite a big database, so we tend to communicate primarily through our own database and talking to our customers. A bit of social, but nothing, right now, we're not doing any massive pushes. We're trying to resist the urge and focus on the fundamentals, so when we do that, we can be a bit more effective.
Perfect. Well, that's one of my hero colours ever. I love the pink. And I was just looking at this. Is this one of the ways that when you said about adding more in?
Yeah,
is that
just the way it's packed. It's such a simple thing, but I think it saved 20%
you can even
space.
put maybe one more in there.
Yeah. But people if you have 11 pods in a box, it doesn't sit well with people. They just don't not that they don't understand. It's just as humans, it just feels weird.
Yeah, that's true.
So because then people will just be like, why did you do that?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, there's a space there, but why there?
Yeah.
So it's funny how we react to things on a human basis.
Thank you so much for coming on the
pleasure.
podcast. I've learned so much about you, and finally, great to catch up because we've been trying to get this in for a while. So yeah,
Fantastic.
thank you so much.
Thanks for the opportunity.